I'm Helena Norberg Hodge, and I'm director and founder of Local Futures, which is an international non-profit organization that's been working for about 47 years to protect both cultural and biological diversity.
How did you get into that involved?
I got into this because I was a linguist and I was asked to go out as part of a film team to an unknown part of the world known as Ladakh. It turned out that Ladakh was the westernmost part of Tibet. It was a big region with about 100 villages. And this region of Tibet belonged politically to India and had been sealed off for political reasons. But then it was suddenly thrown open, and I came out and had this amazing opportunity to get to know from the inside a really traditional indigenous culture that hadn't been affected by either missionaries or colonialism or modern development. And that meant there was no such thing as depression. There was basically no poverty. That's a bit too much, isn't it?
No, you can,
No?
as long as you want.
Okay. So that meant that there was no such thing as depression. There was no such thing as unemployment. There was no poverty. And they were the happiest people I'd ever encountered. Now, of course, they didn't have the comforts that you and I in the West take for granted. But I have to say, those are pretty minimal. And my work has been to try to show that if we support local economic development, we could actually have the wealth of traditional indigenous cultures with strong intergenerational community links. We could have a deep, ongoing relationship with nature as part of our daily lives. But the vital thing is that we look at the economic system and that we realize that the global economy is the cause of most of our problems, including that today everybody is actually getting poorer. We're all running faster and faster just to put food on the table, to put a roof over our head, to meet our basic needs. So there's now this urgent need to spell out that we shouldn't just talk about green development. We should talk about how we can reduce poverty, how we can reduce our workload, how we can reduce our stress, and how that means learning from the basic principles of indigenous cultures and how we survived for tens of thousands of years. Our modern industrial system is like a bleep. It is not this powerful thing we believe, and it's not working. Medicine Festival is a very important part of the deep worldwide localization movement that's going on all around the world, where we are learning from indigenous culture about what's really important. Medicine helps people to rebuild deep community fabrics. My vision is that we have circles of connection everywhere where people learn that if they connect to each other as vulnerable human beings who are not perfect, that they have a deeper dialogue with each other, then just like with the 12-step program, just as you can see in medicine, people can be healed because that deeper connection is essential for our well-being. It's essential to create the openness, the lack of fear of the other, particularly the lack of fear that we won't be loved. So medicine is a very important part of this worldwide movement. It consists of other elements like a worldwide local food movement led primarily by women, where farmers and consumers connect into meaningful, more human scale systems that provide food security. So the food we need doesn't come from the other side of the world. The food we need is local, organic, and healthy. And this movement is demonstrating that on small diversified farms, we can produce more per acre of land. We can use fewer resources and certainly massively reduce climate emissions if we understand the difference between the global food economy and local food systems. My medicine is nature, nature herself, which has always been my medicine ever since I was a teenager. I realized that if I ever felt depressed, if I felt depressed, I would go out into nature. And I realized now it was both moving my body and being in nature and actually alone in nature that was really healing. And by the way, there's huge evidence that that's healing for most people. But we also need to emphasize the vital importance of a deep sense of community and belonging. And that's a bit more tricky for Westerners. And that's something that we teach about in my organization. I wrote about it in my book, Ancient Futures, our films, The Economics of Happiness, Planet Local. These are tools that you can use to start these community initiatives that are about localization, which is about re-indigenization. Yeah, I would say that in everything we do today, it would be really important that we actually have the courage to look at the dominant global corporate system where big banks and corporations are actually running our worldview, dominating in science, shaping the narrative, and how they are literally dictating to our governments. We need to be able to look at that without blame, without anger. It's not about blaming individuals. It's about understanding how we ended up with this system where every day in front of our television screens, we see that billionaires who already have 100 billion or so are getting even richer, while the majority of people, even middle-class people, even so-called wealthy people, are having to run faster and faster, as I said. So it's really important that we're willing to look at that bigger picture without blame. And above all, what that will help us do is to remove a lot of the self-blame that's being imposed on us by corporate think tanks and algorithms. We've seen in the social media how there are algorithms that polarize us and that create this terrible divisive politics of identity, not a politics of coming together to change a system that is honestly bad for all of us. If it destroys the living earth, it's destroying us. And that's what's happening. But remember again, to bring people on board, it's not enough to just talk about the destruction of nature. We've got to talk about how hard people are working. We've got to talk about what's happening to mothers who don't have enough help, who blame themselves for not doing the perfect job of mothering. We have to look at how farmers are made to feel backward and stupid. And all of this comes out of this economic system that is full of a narrative, basically propaganda, that undermines us and that makes us blame ourselves. So this bigger picture is not about blame, but it's about recognizing why are things going so wrong? Why do we have so many crises? Why are we running so fast? Why has politics become meaningless? And suddenly when we see that bigger picture, the solutions are very, very clear. And the wonderful thing is that once we start looking at that, we will see that intuitively, all around the world, people are actually rebuilding the fabric of local interdependence, local economies, community fabric, real interdependence at the local level. And that is part of a global movement. It's a movement that we can support across the world through better communication, even some travel. We need to have a certain amount of travel for emissaries from different parts of the world to come here to see with their own eyes what's actually happening. Because they're being told that we live this life of incredible leisure, luxury, and certainly not about medicine, not about farming, not about natural birth, natural medicine. So there's a whole story that we need to share between ourselves. And this is what we're doing at Planet Local, a summit that we're having at the end of September this year in Bristol. And there will be a group from the medicine movement as well speaking there.